Hello, students. Good morning, all of you. Today, I, Rabindra Mohan Mishra from Sri Jagdamba Sanskrit College, Batho, am taking the class of Shastri first. Today, we see narrative technique applied in the poem Death Be Not Brought. Death Be Not Brought is a single stanza consists of 14 lines, which most lines contain a word with letter T, such as thee, thou, and thy, addressing to death. The first quatrain focuses death. By addressing death, Donne makes it him into a character through personification. The poet wants death to avoid pride and reconsider its or his position as a mighty and dreadful force. The second quatrain turns the criticism of death as less than fearful into praise for death's good qualities. From death comes pleasure, much pleasure, since those good souls whom death releases from earthly suffering experience rest of their bones. Donne then returns to criticizing death for thinking too highly of itself. Death is no sovereign, and so even death has no superiority. The final couplet caps the argument against death. Not only is death the servant of other powers and essentially impotent to truly kill anyone, but also death is itself destined to die when, as in the Christian tradition, the dead are resurrected to their eternal reward. As we know, Donne was a best pioneer of the metaphysical poet. He used very conceit in his poems. Donne points out that death has no power and one day will cease to exist. Death, in looking forward to eternal life. The third quatrain outright mocks and belittles death's power. Death has to play by the rules just like mortals. Here, death is actually more pleasurable than sleep, and that many people are ready to embrace, controlled by many forces that have authority over who, how, and when death may do its job. These arguments, which starts with who, how, and when, takes away death's mystery by making death mortal, which is neither threatening or in control of anything. Donne puts death's domain in the gutter among poison, war, and sickness, and so all should be treated with equal scorn and disrespect. He compares death to charms and drugs, which are simple things to help bring sleep to people as well as animal and others. Also, here Donne illustrates that death does not measure up to charms and poppy because they are enjoyable experience of death and we can wake up from them. This proves that mortals can achieve exactly what death does, so death lost what was left of its pride. In this sonnet, death be not proud, death is closely examined. Donne writes about his view on death and his belief that people should not live in fear of death but embrace it. The poet explains his personal understanding of death and its permanence. Here, death is treated as a person and Donne talks to him. He assumes death as a human being. Death means the end in some people's eyes, and he is called mighty and dreadful. However, Donne tells him not to be proud as he is not that powerful. Death can kill no more, so as done. Death is compared to rest and sleep. These are two things that are not scary at all. Donne presents a beautiful picture of pleasure that death just looks like a person who is sleeping all the time. Death is said to be a slave of fate. Throughout this poem, Donne uses literary devices such as imagery and diction to discuss and overaching theme of death along with its religious implications. He also elaborates on the complexity of emotion. Dunn's witty and clever style, paired with his affinity for social and religious commentary, allows his work to make immortal. Many fear death just simply thinking about it. However, John Donne's persona in the poem Death Way Not Proud interpret death as something pleasant rather than the absolute end. Donne converses with death and argues that death is not the universal prayer destroyer of life. He elaborates on the conflict that death, through the use of imagery, figurative language, and a structure, these elements not only increase the power of dance message but also symbolize the meaning of hope of eternal life. In short, we conclude that the technique which is applied in the poem Death Not Be Proud is very splendid. It is very straightforward explaining about death. Thanks. Good night. All the best.